welcome to my Pokemon series. For a more in-depth explanation, watch the previous videos in this series, but I'm gonna go through it real quick. In this series, I play through the Pokemon games on PokeMMO, a slightly harder Pokemon MMO. It's the first 5 games, and you can play them online with your friends, or by yourself, the main perk being difficulty and the economy. I tell my own story with these series, so it's not exactly the story of the games, it's more so what if I was in Pokemon, and actually based on how I played the game. So without any further ado, let's actually get into the video. So my journey started and I left my apartment for the time and went to get a Pokemon from the professor. I chose Piplup and named him Arctic, and on my way to Jubilife City I actually caught a Pokemon. This Pokemon was a Shinx who I named Shocker. And then as per usual I finished grinding up Arctic to level 16 and it evolved into a weird blue bowling pin. I then got the town map and made my way to Orberg City to fight Rock. He sends out his Geodude and I send out Shocker. My method of thinking here is that Shocker is weaker to these Pokemon, and so sending Shocker out first saves the stronger hitter for last. Shocker simply bites the Geodude, which does a good chunk of damage, about 25%, and luckily Rurik's Geodude actually flinched, so I got a free turn basically. Rourke sends out his Onix and I bite the Onix. I was expecting to bite Geodude, but it's fine, especially since I basically got another free turn. Shocker continues to bite away as Onix uses Bulldoze. Shocker loses about 25% health, and eventually Shocker just barely toughs it out with like 5% HP, but Onix goes down. Then Cranidos kills Shocker and I have to send out Arctic. Then Arctic wipes out both Cranidos and Geodude, winning me the first badge of the region. I then help the regional professor kick the shit out of some goons before continuing on my path towards the Eterna City gym. Then eventually I do manage to get to Eterna, and I make my way to fighting Gardenia, the gym leader. First she sends out her Cherim and I send out Arctic. Arctic begins storing energy with Bye. She eventually switches out her Cherim for her Roserade, who takes Arctic's stored energy and dies. And then she once again sends out Cherim. Arctic then takes a hit but immediately roosts to restore HP. Arctic tries using Metal Claw but it isn't really effective, and so Arctic once again resorts to biting and then killing Cherim. Then Gardenia sends out her Groddle. Arctic then uses Metal Claw to get Groddle to half health, allowing Shocker to come in and bite Groddle to death. I then get the Eternia City gym. I then meet the regional champion, Cynthia, an absolute honor personally, and she gives me a Pokemon egg. I thank Cynthia for the egg, she leaves, and then eventually this egg becomes a Togepi. I then make my way to Hearthome City, or is it Hearthome? One or the other. Here I actually see my mom again. She tells me of her past doing Pokemon contests, and it being a fairly successful past. And so I decide that I'd put my hand into the ring and try a little bit of it myself. But you know, it took me a minute to decide who my shining star would be, and eventually I decided on an old pal. I decided that my shining contest winning Pokemon would be Zap. First we enter the coolness contest, and since we're beginners we start at the normal level. First Zap uses Shockwave for a strong start. The following Pokemon do alright, but not nearly as good as Zap and I. Then Zap used Double Kick, allowing Pidgeotto to get the lead in the competition and not really gaining too much points for us. Zap then uses Thunder for a mediocre performance. Zap then uses Shockwave again to maintain our lead. Zap then strategically startles the other Pokemon, allowing us to maintain our lead in the next round. But alas, we get second to the enemy Pidgeotto. Then we try again and get second to a Ladybug. Don't get me wrong, all props to the winner, but I think my Pikachu is a little cooler than that bug. Then in our next try, we finally managed to win first place in the competition. Zap and I then decided to diversify our entries a bit and move on to the beauty competition. Zap uses a dazzling combination of electric moves along with other abilities such as Surf to win the wonderful beauty contest. First try, unlike coolness for some reason. We then confidently move on to the cuteness contest. We put our best foot forward and try to be as cute as possible, and then get third for my Pikachu? I couldn't have it. We put on an even more dazzling, adorable show, and then we naturally get first place on our second attempt. I then enter Zap in the smartness contest, assuming that my Pikachu will be fairly intelligent. Zap shows off her intelligence fairly well, but alas only gets second, so we must go in for another try. We compete once again, and naturally Zap has learned from the last try and wins first place with ease. We then enter the toughness competition. Now, Zap is an officially recognized champion of Kanto, and has beaten Lance in competition, so I assume that Zap is pretty tough. Well, Zap was on my team, Zap didn't single-handedly do that, but still. And then to my shock, we get third. Utterly disgraceful if you ask me, so we must try again. We make our second attempt, try our toughest, and then get third again. Then we put in all our might and get third again. But hey, fourth time's the charm, and then we get third again. But then on our next attempt, we luckily make some progress and get second. Then on our next attempt, we finally get first on what should probably be the easiest of the competitions for that. Competition, I guess, with an acorn and a sloth along with Santa Claus. And now that our little Pokemon contest arc is over, I buy Zap a little costume, representing both the contest aspects of Zap's life, along with our previous battling exploits. But if you remember my conversation with my mother prior in the video, around that time I actually met the gym leader of Hearthome City. So I then made my way to Hearthome City's gym, and so I then begin my fight with Fantina. First I send out Arctic while she sends out her Miss Magius. She does a solid amount of damage to me with Magical Leap, and I blast back with Bubble Beam. We continue this until Arctic has about 25% HP and Miss Magius goes down. Arctic then roosts to recover some HP, allowing Arctic to use Bubble Beam to get Duskull really low. From there, we roost one more time just to be sure, and then blast with another Bubble Beam to kill Duskull. However, Duskull had used Toxic on Arctic, making Arctic life, sadly, very limited in this battle, and making it so that her Haunter successfully downs Arctic. I then had my Togepi come in and use a status move to slightly weaken Haunter's attack stat. It's the only thing he really could have done. So then I sent in Shocker, and then Haunter immediately put Shocker to sleep. Haunter then drains a good chunk of Shocker's HP, but luckily Shocker wakes up to attack. The bite is super effective and immediately kills Haunter in one hit. From there, it's Shocker versus Drifloon. And Shocker, with a mix of speed and power, successfully one-shots Drifloon with a spark. So we then successfully defeated the Hearthome City gym. I then make my way to Veilstone City to battle Maylene. First I have to beat her annoyingly difficult gym puzzle first, but then it's time for battle. Shocker also evolves into his final form, a Luxray, along with me evolving my Togepi, now named Manic, into its final form, a Togekiss. First, she sends out her Machoke, and I send out Arctic. Arctic takes a bunch of hits while storing energy with Bide, then blasts Machoke with energy, enough force to knock him straight out. Then she sends out her Lucario, and Arctic goes down to a single Thunder Punch due to not having much health left. I then send out Shocker, who uses Volt Switch. Manic then shoots out and tanks an attack from Lucario. Manic is able to get one Air Slash off on Lucario before dying to his flurry of Thunder Punches. Shocker then comes back out and defeats Lucario with 2 Volt Switches. Then out comes her Monferno. Shocker gets real low from his attacks, but luckily 2 Volt Switches is all it takes to kill him. Then out comes Maylene's final Pokemon, her Meditite. He lands a powerful hit on Shocker, leaving her at only 4 HP, but due to Shocker's speed, she successfully kills him with 2 Volt Switches, and we just barely win the battle. And then we're halfway done with all the gym battles in the region. Then in my travels, Arctic levels up a lot more and becomes an Empoleon, and then up next is Crasher Wake and his water gym. First I sent out Shocker and he sends out his Quagsire. I soon switch for Manic. Then strategically, I have Manic use Encore. This makes it so that Quagsire only uses ground moves, which Manic being a flying type is immune to. From there, Manic destroys his Quagsire, and then his Floatzel comes out. Pokemon I'm not too fond of in general. Manic flies on him 2 times, getting him extremely low, but then dies, so I have to send out Shocker. And so Floatzel goes down with a single shock. From there, out comes Gyarados, who is double weak to electric attacks, so I presume my luck against him. And though Shocker does dip into the lower half of her HP, successfully defeats Gyarados. From there, it's Shocker versus Prinplup, and like a bowling ball, Shocker slams through him, winning us the battle, and winning us our 5th gym badge. On my travels to the next gym, an old man kindly gives me a Porygon, and I soon evolve it into Porygon Z. I then make my way to Canalave City, where I go to fight Byron. First he sends out Bastiodon, while I send out Shocker. Shocker tries to Spark, but Bastiodon switches out for Steelix, who is part ground type and therefore immune to electric attacks. I then send out Arctic, who one-shots him with a Surf after taking damage from an Earthquake. Then he switches out for his Magnezone, and I send Shocker back out. Shocker deals alright damage, but I decide to switch back out for Arctic. Arctic gets pretty low but manages to kill Magnezone. Then out comes Byron's Bronzong. I then have Arctic spam Roost to get higher on HP, using Surf to get Bronzong really low. Then I switch out Arctic for Zeta. Zeta manages to get Bronzong just low enough for Shocker to come out and finish the job. Then out comes Magneton. Magneton then explodes, which was quite the shocker. So the final battle of the gym is Bastiodon versus Manic. Up until Manic dies anyway, and then I send out a very weak Arctic. And luckily 1 Surf is enough, which is good because I felt like I nearly had to steal that victory from Byron. He then gives me his gym badge. I then make my way to the second to last gym through the ice and the snow and right into Candace's gym. First she sends out Frostlass while I send out Arctic. She then hits Arctic with a Thunderbolt, and so Arctic responds with a Flash Cannon. And so Frostlass goes down and she sends out her Weavile. Weavile uses a low kick and Arctic responds with another Flash Cannon. Alas though, Weavile survives due to their Focus Sash, and so I send out Zeta. I use Zeta's few turns to heal Arctic, and then Zeta dies. I then send out Shocker, who defeats Weavile with a quick attack. Then out comes her Mamoswine. Assuming an Earthquake is coming, I have Shocker switch out for Manic, who would be immune to the ground type move. Manic gets Mamoswine down to half health with flying, but alas, dies. Then Shocker comes out and uses Crunch, but Mamoswine Swine switches out, and the attack doesn't do much to an Abomasnow. Shocker whittles Abomasnow down to half health before dying, which allows Arctic to swoop in and destroy Abomasnow with Surf. From there, 2 Surfs defeats her Metachamp, and 1 final Surf defeats her Mamoswine, winning me my second to last gym badge. So now my final challenge before the Elite Four is Volkner. But first I feel like I have to introduce some new members to our team. First is a Mad Cargo I named Cardo, for personal reasons, and second is a Dusclops I named Reaper. So now on to Volkner. First he sends out Raichu and I send out Reaper. I try to attack with a Shadow Punch, but alas, Raichu switches out for a Luxray. Obviously Reaper here now has a disadvantage type-wise, but I decide to keep him in regardless. Reaper gets the Luxray down to about half health before dying, and so I send out Arctic. And so the Luxray goes down with just 1 Surf. Volkner sends out his Electivire, who sadly gets Arctic down really low in HP, but Arctic just toughs it through enough to kill the Electivire. But then, obviously, Arctic gets one-shot by Jolteon. Then I send out Cardo, who destroys his Raichu with an Earthquake. I then have Cardo switch out for Zeta, mainly because Cardo does not have the skills equipped to defeat Rotom. And, thankfully, Zeta powers through and defeats Rotom. From there, every other member of my party slowly dies, and then Shocker manages to deal the final blow to Jolteon, getting me the final gym badge. So I make my way through another annoying victory road, and finally make my way to the Elite Four. I walk into Aaron's room and he throws out his Drapion. I send out Arctic, who uses Surf. I get Drapion really low, but he uses Barrier to get to about half health again. His Earthquake also sends Arctic to about half health himself. Arctic kills Drapion but barely makes it through with 14 HP. Aaron then sends out his Heracross, who finishes off Arctic. However, his Heracross has a Flame Orb, which means that now he's burning, which gives me a little bit of an advantage here. I send out Cardo and try to use Flamethrower, but Heracross kills him instantly. Then in an attempt to outspeed Heracross, I send out Shocker. Shocker uses Volt Switch, which both does a ton of damage to Heracross, and also allows me to get Shocker out of there because my Dark type against his fighting type is not a fight that's in my favor. I then have Reaper come in because Reaper is Ghost type, which is immune to fighting. But Heracross actually has Shadow Claw, which means that Reaper faints. So then Shocker comes out and kills him with a Volt Switch. I then send out Zeta against his Scizor. Zeta's Thunderbolt does decent damage, but most importantly, paralyzes Scizor, which doesn't really actually have any effect on this because Scizor fights through it and kills Zeta. Shocker then gets Scizor to nearly 0 health with a Volt Switch and switches out for Manic. But then Aaron uses an item and Scizor is back at max health, but Manic manages to fly enough to kill Scizor. Then Aaron John Mega kills Manic, but Shocker rushes right in and basically immediately murders John Mega. And then with just 2 Volt Switches, Shocker manages to kill Aaron's Vespiquen. I shake Aaron's hand and move on to the next room. I walk into the next room and begin my battle with Bertha. She sends out her Hippowdon while I send out Arctic. I take a risk and blast out a Hydro Pump, instantly killing Hippowdon. From there, Bertha sends out her Golem. To avoid death, I switch out Arctic for Zeta. Zeta attacks with the Signal Beam and deals a little bit of damage, but then dying after the fact. I did this because I knew her Golem had Sturdy, meaning that 1 Surf from Arctic is enough to kill Golem. If I hadn't sacrificed Zeta in that instance, Arctic would have died, and in this battle, Arctic is very important type matchup-wise. Then out comes Whiscash, so I put Arctic back in the ball and send out Cardo. I did this for a clean switch and send out Reaper. Reaper and Whiscash trade blows, but Whiscash sleeps and then switches out, and so Bertha sends out her Gliscor. I send out Arctic, who gets really low on health from an Earthquake, but then surfs Gliscor, killing it instantly. Then I have Arctic Hydro Pump Rhyperior to immediate demise, and then Hydro Pump Whiscash to the Shadow Realm. And so I've defeated Bertha. She congratulates me, and I move on to the next room. I walk into Flint's fiery domain, and he sends out his Houndoom. I retaliate by sending out Cardo and setting up Stealth Rock. Luckily, he switches out for his Flareon. Flareon one-shots Cardo, so I send out Arctic, instantly one-shotting Flareon with a Surf. Then Flint sends out his Infernape. Infernape nearly kills Arctic, but luckily Arctic surfs and kills Infernape. Then out comes Magmortar, who kills Arctic. I then send out Reaper, who uses Curse to kill Magmortar while also sacrificing himself. And so Zeta comes in and finishes the job. Then Houndoom comes out and nearly dies from a Tri-Attack, and gets Zeta down to half health, after which Zeta promptly uses another Tri-Attack and kills Houndoom. Then out comes Rapidash, who kills Zeta, and then dies to 1 Volt Switch from Shocker, meaning that I was now 3/4 through the Elite Four, and 2 rooms from Cynthia. Once again, I acknowledge Flint, and then move on to the next room. I enter Lucian's room ready to fight, and yet he stands there calmly. He may be calm, but I know he's strong on the inside. Not to mention I'm not exactly bursting at the seams with amazing type matchups here, so I have to try real hard not to make any mistakes. He starts with Espeon and I throw at Arctic. Arctic takes a bit of damage, but luckily manages to get Espeon down to half health with Flash Cannon. Espeon then heals and I do it again, then heals and I do it again, so I decide to use Surf, which seems far more effective. So 2 Surfs and Espeons down. Out comes Gallade, who one-shots Arctic. I then send out Reaper, who shadow punches Gallade to death. Out comes Alakazam, who gets Reaper really low on health. And Reaper would have one-shotted if not for a focus sash. So Reaper goes down, and now I feel I have to explain something. I accidentally leveled up Zeta too much, so I had to have Ryuko from the last video fill in. And so Ryuko uses Bullet Punch to finish off Alakazam. And then comes out Bronzong. Ryuko manages to kill Bronzong with just 2 X-Scissors. And then Ryuko one-shots Mr. Mime, meaning that I'm now all the way through the Elite Four. However, my celebration can't last long because I need to enter the next room and challenge Cynthia. First, she sends out Spiritomb and I send out Arctic. Arctic lands a Hydro Pump, but Spiritomb switched out for Milotic. I then predict another switch and shoot out another Hydro Pump, this nearly killing her Garchomp. Garchomp then uses Earthquake to nearly kill Arctic, but Arctic retaliates with a Surf, killing Garchomp, the greatest threat on her team. Then out comes Togekiss and Arctic dies. I then send out Shocker, who uses Volt Switch. Fairly effective, but thanks to a berry, not that great in this moment. I then anticipate Togekiss's move and send out Reaper, and Reaper luckily gets a clean switch in because Reaper is immune to the attack. Togekiss attacks and makes Reaper flinch a few times, making it so that Reaper dies without doing any damage. Then I send out Shocker again. This time Volt Switch nearly kills Togekiss, and I send it in Cardo. Cardo's immediate demise allows me to send Shocker back in to finish off Togekiss. I then send out Manic against her Milotic. I have Manic fly while Milotic heals. Then I have Manic use an Encore on Milotic, meaning that Milotic can't attack me at all. This causes Milotic to switch out for Lucario. Then while Manic is flying, Lucario switches out for Milotic again, and we do this whole same song and dance. With the exception of me having Manic not use Encore and whittling down Milotic's health until it hits 0. Then Manic dies in a fight against Roserade, while also getting Roserade down to nearly 0 HP. And so one of Ryuko's bullet punches is all I need to finish it off. Ryuko manages to get Lucario down to half health but dies in the process. Lucario gets Shocker to half health, but Shocker manages to kill Lucario. Then it's Shocker versus Spiritomb, and the fight isn't exactly in my favor. I had used all of my money in the game on previous attempts, and I didn't think I had much left anyway. There was no way in hell a potion was gonna get me through this, so I scrounged through my bag anyway in a vain attempt of hope, thinking maybe I'd missed a max revive and I still had some. I couldn't find anything, so I just used a full restore on Shocker, getting Shocker back to full HP. I was thinking maybe, just maybe, Shocker could tough this out, but fighting a Pokemon with a Rocky helmet that doesn't take much damage from your attacks anyway, who also deals a ton of damage to you, gets Shocker really low. I assume all hope is lost. But I revive Shocker's health again anyway, not because I think I can win, but because I'm not going to go down without trying. As Shocker stands there getting its ass beat, I look in my bag one last time, hoping for anything, thinking maybe an event cookie has a special effect that could help me here, but it didn't. But I did notice one thing at the bottom of my bag, well, 2 things actually. 2 revives. Not max revives, but still revives. I still didn't think anything would work, but I had to try. I look at my team, veterans of war at this point, who have helped me through this entire region, and Ryuko, who helped me through the last. And I think who is going to help me the most here. And I think back to the beginning of this journey when I chose my first Pokemon, and now, once again, I decide to choose Arctic. Shocker uses Volt Switch and Arctic comes out, and Arctic blasts Spiritomb with Hydro Pump, killing it. The 2 Pokemon at the beginning of this journey helped me through to the end, and we have defeated Cynthia. I put my team into the Hall of Fame, knowing that Zeta kinda deserved to be here as well, and yet feel pride. And I know all of my Pokemon feel pride, even Zeta, who isn't in the room, because we are champions. So my overall thoughts on this game. As usual, not the biggest fan of the evil team segment, just not my cup of tea. However, the gyms were pretty fun in this region, a few annoying puzzles, but less so than previous regions. And overall, I think this may be my favorite so far. So far, my favorite region is Kanto. I just like the way the map feels to move around it. My favorite actual in-game story, which doesn't factor too much into this video, is Emerald. But I think these are my favorite gyms, my favorite Elite Four, and my favorite champion, at least of the games I've done in this series so far. But thank you for watching all the way to the end. And now, just for you who watched through my 30-second segment where I review the game, here's a post-review scene. Not exactly post-credits, but basically the same thing. Trip back home to Unova, huh? A challenge waiting for me. Well, it wouldn't be my first time going to another region. Why not? Like and subscribe!